Hello there, David Risley here with another episode of Coffee Break Blogging. Now, in these last few episodes, we've been talking about various aspects of product creation. And in the last episode, episode 118, we talked a lot about different learning styles that we need to accommodate in our online training courses. Now, with that in mind, we're going to jump right into this one, which is how to kind of put all this together and create an awesome online training course. One that actually works, one that's going to get the results that you want, and ultimately that's what's going to help lead to more sales. So I want to start off here with a few important aspects of an awesome course, something that's really going to connect and do its job. Now, the first one that I want to mention is to have a very clear starting point and an ending point in your course. I've seen a lot of courses, and I've done this myself, and it's actually something that I'm resurrecting as we speak. I'm working on it inside the Blog Monetization Lab, because it's real easy when you've got something large like the Blog Monetization Lab itself to get in there as a brand new user and go, oh, wow, I see there's a lot here, but I have no idea what direction to go. And so for that reason, it's very important that you have an on-ramp for people who are just getting started with your course. You've got to provide them a very clear starting point. Now, in my case, I have people coming into the Blog Monetization Lab at various aspects of their business. I have some people who are just starting out and literally have never made a sale on the internet. I have some who are in the game and they've got something cool going on already and they're just looking to improve their game. And so in my case, I'm actually going to be setting up different tracks so that people can choose essentially what direction they want to go. So if they're brand new, they're going to go down one path. And if they're not brand new, they're going to go down another path. And that's how I'm going to provide that clear starting point. And then, of course, another thing that I do with the Blog Monetization Lab is that I have an orientation webinar where the entire purpose is to get people clued in as to what's going on with the community, get them integrated, get them on the right track with their lab membership. And so that's a way to provide a clear starting point as well. And so when you create your awesome online course, you need to think about what is the clear starting point going to be? What are the first few steps you want them to execute as soon as they get in there? Now, at the flip side, you got to also be thinking about the ending, because all good transformations eventually have an end, and we want our customer, our student, to acknowledge the fact that they've actually gotten to the end. You need to acknowledge them. You need to put a period on the end of that sentence, but they need to realize that they've reached that point as well. Okay? So it's very important. And this is a really good point from a marketing perspective, to ask them for referrals, to ask them for their testimonial, those types of things. But you want them to realize that they have accomplished what they set out to accomplish. Now, my second important point here is the in-between. We want to have a clear start. We want to have a clear end. You also want to have a clear middle. And what I mean by that is that you need to provide a very clear step-by-step, this is the order of progression through your course. You want them to be able to track their progress, and you want them to know what comes next after the thing that they're doing right that minute. And that's very important when it comes to training, because, we see module-based courses, module 1, module 2, and that's great. So that provides some semblance of order. But human nature being what it is, and because so many people structure their courses around different modules, people tend to just kind of go any damn way they want. And sometimes it's just not in their best interest, but they're still going to do it. They're just like, that looks interesting. So they jump right to module 5, Now, so you need to provide that clear progression and take some control over the situation. And if that means that you need to dish the content out to them over time rather than letting them have the whole thing, then do it. Even if you get a few people who protest, do it and tell them why you're doing it, because that's important. If you just say no, well, you're kind of being like not a cool person. But if you say no, but this is exactly why, and I'm really interested in you getting this result, they'll understand most of the time, okay? And you need to control that so that they actually get the result that you're trying to get them to, okay? Now, another important aspect of creating this awesome online course is to cover the different learning styles. And again, we talked about that in a lot more detail back in episode 118, which is just one episode ago. But we need to cover things like having videos inside of our training in order to cover those visual learners and those people who learn by sound and by looking at those types of things. If you have videos, it kind of covers both of those aspects. We also want to cover the written aspect. So one way to do that is by way of transcripts, and I definitely recommend that you do that. But the other way is to go the extra mile. Don't just be a transcript. Actually, clean it up and make it to where it's actually readable as its own thing. I mean, you take what I'm saying right now, and we do transcribe every podcast, but I am well aware of the fact that if you're reading this in a transcript, it kind of goes all over the place or what have you. It's a little more difficult to read because I was saying this. I wasn't preparing it for the written word. So you can go the extra mile for your customers, and instead of it just being a raw transcript, you actually clean it up and make it flow really nicely, because some people learn better via written word than via video. Now, the other thing is to have systems inside the course. Systems for those people who do things by way of reasoning or by way of checklist, and they're very systematic in the way they think. And for that, you can have literally checklists that they can download and go through. You can guide them through the entire course by way of a checklist or a check sheet and say, this is what you do, check it off, do this, okay, check that off, and literally just give them some easy to follow stuff that they can go and implement. Another thing that you can do in order to cover the major learning styles is to have exercises or application drills inside your course. And I think this is a really important thing to do, because they don't really make this knowledge theirs until they actually use it. And sometimes, you think that they're there to get a result. They think that they're there to get a result, but for some reason, not everybody connects the dots that they actually have to go do stuff to get a result. It's weird. I mean, I have people still who come through stuff inside the blog monetization lab, and they just kind of check off the action plans, and it's almost like they're checking it off simply because they watched the video. And I'm like, that's not why you should check it off. You should check it off because you went and actually did it. So sometimes you just really got to make that special point to be like, hey, dude, go do it, then come back and tell them exactly what to do. If it's not something that's on their own business, then you make up a situation and apply a drill to that and have them do it. But go and have them do actual things in real life to apply those things that they're learning. And then lastly, you want to have a social aspect inside your course, I think, in order to make it a really complete experience. And a lot of people these days are setting up private Facebook groups for that, or you could have a forum. I think in a lot of cases, private Facebook groups actually work a lot better, though, okay? Now, the other thing that I think is really important for your course is to have an acknowledgement of their completion. This is the idea of having that clear ending point that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. Now, and also with this acknowledgement of completion should come an element of status. And so a really good way to do this is simply by giving them a certificate, maybe acknowledging them publicly, something like that really shows them that they've reached something, okay? I think that's a really cool thing to build into it. Now, let's talk a little bit about the creation process of your course itself. The first thing that I recommend that you do before you record anything or write anything is to outline the full course. I think you need to outline it down to probably some detail. You want to separate your planning from your actual execution here. And I think it's really important to have that course completely laid out from a bird's eye view before you get busy, actually making it. Now, as you create this outline, you need to build in the different learning styles that we've talked about. So make a mention of what is the format of this particular thing going to be. How am I going to cover these different learning styles? I think that's a very important thing to build into the course. Now, I want to make a little note about modules. A lot of courses, are put into module format, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It does provide some sense of order. The only thing is, like I mentioned earlier, that For a lot of people, the whole module idea has just kind of fallen by the wayside because they just say, oh, great, I got a 6-module course, but they still go and they determine their own path through it. And so sometimes what happens is the students are, because they're doing everything out of sequence, it doesn't really connect and they get a little confused and overwhelmed by it. And ultimately, they don't get what they enrolled for. And so for that reason, there's nothing wrong with the module structure, but you might need to exercise some actual control over the release of those modules to ensure that they go in a particular order. Okay? Now, at the same time, if the material that you're teaching doesn't really warrant having a multi-module setup, then don't do it. You know, some of the things that I teach inside the blog monetization lab, I put into action plan format because, quite frankly, I don't need to do a big-ass multi-module course on it. I just don't. It's more useful for me to just simply outline a progression, walk them through that progression, and they get the result at the end of it, than it is for me to make a special point to do modules simply because everybody out there seems to do modules in their side of their courses. Okay, so keep that in mind as you outline your course. Now, the whole time while you're outlining, I want you to keep your eye on the goal. And your job is to get your student to the stated goal of the course. You are delivering an outcome through them through your course. And now, for that reason, I recommend that you do a fluff check. A fluff check is simply making sure when you outline your material that you're not introducing things in there that, quite frankly, they just don't need to know that in order to get their result, okay? Generally speaking, most people are not out simply to acquire more information. They're out they want to learn the things they've got to know just to get the result they want, and then they want to move on with their lives. Okay, so do a fluff check, and don't just simply cover things to make yourself look smart or anything like that, because that's not helpful. All right, the next thing I want to mention in terms of creation of your online course is to record the course in order. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you have an outline. It's going to go bullet point by bullet point or module by module, whatever it may be. I think that you should record and create the course in that exact order, because then you're actually following along in the same progression that your student will. And that means that you can provide a lot more order through things because you're going through it along with them. Now, in order to make this even better, I think that you should try like hell to record this whole thing as quickly as you can. Now, if you're going to record a course, spend that day or two or whatever it takes to outline the whole thing and really get it nailed down. And then once you've got it nailed down, you just record it as quickly as you can. Maybe dedicate a day or two and just say, my entire goal for this couple of days is to create this course. Now, it shouldn't take you that long to make it at this point because you've already made all the decisions as to what's going to be inside of it. You've already planned it all out with the outline. Now you're just executing. So you can just go bam, 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 and get this stuff done. But I recommend you do anything you can to shorten the amount of time that you're spending creating it, because then it keeps you in the groove. It keeps you traveling along on the same progression as your student instead of allowing yourself to get distracted by things in your life while you're creating this course. And I think the result is going to be that you're going to have a course with just a lot more buttoned down. It's just really going to be a lot more effective this way, okay? It also makes it a lot more logical for you because you end off recording one thing and you know exactly what mindset you were in when you move into the next one, okay? Very, very important. Now, let's talk a little bit about tools here, tools of building online courses. We're going to be talking more about this a little bit later here in Coffee Break Blogging, where we're going to start talking about putting together membership sites and stuff, because it just so happens to be that membership sites are really the main way that most people in my business are delivering online courses. But let's mention a few things here. First of all, I am a big proponent of building on top of WordPress as a platform. That should be pretty much a known fact by now. Now, the platform that I recommend on top of WordPress is a learning management system called WP Courseware. Now, I'm a fan of WP Courseware. It's not perfect, but it's a really good system. And what it does is it allows you to structure content inside of WordPress into a course format. Literally your modules, your training units, everything is organized with WP Courseware. Now, the other thing I like about WP Courseware is that it has some of these important aspects of an online course built into it. For example, there is clear tracking of one thing into the next. WP Courseware will automatically put a little box at the end of a training unit that says in so many words basically says, "Are you done with this?" And then they check a box and actually mark it complete. And then that takes them to the next one. And so WP Courseware actually will allow you to put a actual progression through your material and guide them from one to the next, and it tracks their progress through it rather than letting it be a free-for-all. And I think that's probably the most important aspect of what WP Courseware will do. Now, there are some alternatives out there, and you can go and do your own pros and cons evaluation of them. One of them is called LearnDash, which is also another WordPress plugin. One is called Sensei. I'm very not familiar with that, but I've seen it out there. Another one is called Zippy Courses, put out by Derek Halpern. I've seen Zippy Courses in action. I've not actually used it myself. Looks like a really nice, clean system. It does have the theme and everything included with it, but I don't think that's required. But it's more of a new player on the scene, and it might work out for you. And there are other ones probably as well. But the one that I prefer and the one that I'm using myself inside the Blog Monetization Lab is WP Courseware. Now, in terms of the theme that you use for your training course, quite frankly, it really doesn't matter. You can use any theme that you want. My blog is set up on top of the Genesis framework using a custom theme. It works just fine. Basically, the same exact theme that is used for my main public site is the one that I'm using for my training content. Works just fine. Now, if you want to have a little bit more control than that, and you're not as technical as I may be, you can use systems like Optimize Press or Thrive Themes. These guys, they have some nice membership or course templates built into the system, and it works out just fine. I mean, at the end of the day, your theme is not a major consideration when it comes to your course. As long as the stuff is easy to find and the navigation is easy to use, you can pretty much work with almost any theme out there. Now, a word about your videos. Definitely an important component of a good online course. You want to do what you can with these videos to make them as engaging as possible. And for that reason, I recommend that you do what you can to not rely only on slides. A lot of people will make slides, and then they will just record themselves talking to their slides. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just you got to look at it from the student's perspective and realize that after watching a bunch of that, it can get a little mind-numbing to watch your material. And so you need to take that into account when it comes to the videos that you create for your course. Realize that it's an experience in and of itself to go through your course, and you've got to hold their attention throughout it in order to get the result that you want and what they want. And so you should mix it up a little bit. Don't depend just on slides. Mix in some live action shots, maybe you on camera talking to them, and switch it up. Switch it back and forth. If you're teaching about a topic that is more like real world and not just simply on a computer screen, then take a camera and show some live action of those things happening in real life. Mix it up. Don't just depend on bullet point slides, okay? I think that's an important point. Another thing that I sometimes do in my videos is use what I call a digital whiteboard. Very simple. Instead of it being slides, you can literally draw on your screen. Now, here's how I do this. I have a tablet on my computer, or it's attached to my Mac here, and it's made by Wacom. I think it's called the Wacom Bamboo tablet or something like that. We can link to it up in the show notes at the Blog Marketing Academy. But it's simply a tablet, connects to my Mac via USB, and it allows me to draw on that tablet. Now, on my Mac, I have a program called Fly Sketch. Fly Sketch. And I think it cost me like $15 or something like that, but it allows me to draw on my screen. Now I can make that screen pure white. I can actually make it any color I want and just simply draw on there. Or I can make the thing transparent and draw on top of whatever is underneath it. So let's say that I'm doing a tutorial on a piece of software, or perhaps I am doing an evaluation of somebody's blog. I can actually show their blog and draw on top of it and point to opt-in forms and point to all kinds of different things. Very, very useful, and I use Fly Sketch to do that, and then I simply record it as a screencast right there with ScreenFlow in my particular case. If you're using a PC, then I'd recommend that you check out Camtasia as a really good option for recording your screen. Now, if you don't have Fly Sketch or anything similar, you're not going to be able to do the transparent thing, but you can do the whiteboard thing if you pull out a copy of Photoshop or any other program that will allow you to draw using one of the tools, and you just simply have a nice white background and draw inside of Photoshop and record it in the same way. Okay, so that's how I do a digital whiteboard, and it's a good style of training video. In terms of hosting, I like Vimeo Pro. Now, Vimeo is a great service, but if you're going to do this type of stuff, I really recommend that you get the extra features of the Pro account. And I believe that I'm paying them like $200 for a year, which, divided by monthly, it's not that much money. Now, there is video hosting out there available with Amazon S3. That works out just fine if you want to do that. Just a little bit more of a manual process, and you're going to have to find a player that works for you. And quite frankly, I just like outsourcing that to Vimeo Pro because they take care of all those logistics for me. And my job is to be creating training content, not to be screwing around with the technical part of it, okay? So that's why I use Vimeo Pro. There are also options like Wistia, and many people do know about Wistia. And Wistia is a great, great service. Now that they've reduced their pricing several months back, it's a little bit more within grasp of many people for training content. But realize that the cost will add up a lot quicker than Vimeo Pro. And so for that reason, I use Wistia primarily for marketing videos where I actually need to track the engagement with it and stuff like that. I don't typically use it for training stuff inside the courses. For that, I use Vimeo Pro. The one last tool that I want to mention here for an online training course, excuse me, is Gravity Forms. Now, Gravity Forms is a plugin for WordPress that allows you to create some really nice forms. But the thing is, first of all, you can create forms that are really intense. So you could do some quizzes with it, which would be great for online training. Really cool stuff you can do with Gravity Forms. But the other thing I like about it is that it very nicely integrates with the WordPress user system. So if you're running a membership site and they're logged in and they're viewing training videos, you can do things like have the person's name and email automatically attached to the form, even as a hidden field, so that when they type something to you, you're not sitting there asking them to enter their name and email address or any of that crap. Again, because, the system should already know who they are. And so that's why I like Gravity Forms, because you can do some really ninja stuff with the way that Gravity Forms works, but it also it just provides a better student experience because I'm not asking them who they are constantly when my system should already know that. Okay, so that's the Gravity Forms plugin. Okay, so we went a little longer than I usually do in an episode of Coffee Break, but I really wanted to cover a lot of different aspects here on how to create an awesome online training course, because this kind of stuff that we're talking about right now is how you deliver your transformation, which is the underlying thing behind all the sales and the monetization stuff that we're going to be talking about later. At the end of the day, if you don't have a solid product that gets the result, nobody's going to want to buy it. Okay, so that's why all this stuff matters so much. I want to end off this episode of Coffee Break by reminding you again that if you're finding these episodes valuable, if you've been listening to me for a little while and you have not yet posted your review of this podcast on iTunes, then I implore you to go and do that right now. Okay, so you can do that by running over to blogmarketingacademy.com/iTunes, and that will basically shortcut you right into iTunes, and you can do that. Now, you could also go and probably search iTunes for Coffee Break Blogging and do it that way. But I would really appreciate if you drop me a line, drop me a review and a star rating inside of iTunes, and let everybody know what you think of this show, if you're finding it valuable, things like that. The other thing is that if you ever have a question for me and just want to respond privately to me on any episode of Coffee Break Blogging, you can email me personally at david@blogmarketingacademy.com. Okay. Now, if it's an account related question or something like that, you're going to hear from Dawn first, but those emails all come through me, and I'd be happy to reply to you. So again, that's david@blogmarketingacademy.com. Okay. A little bit of a longer episode than usual, though. I hope that you found it valuable, and I will see you next time here on Coffee Break Blogging. Talk soon. Thanks for listening to this episode of Coffee Break Blogging. If you like what you heard here today, we have something awesome we'd love to send you. It's called the Blog Conversion Guide, and it has 9 tweaks you can make to your blog in order to increase your conversion rate to get more opt-ins and sales. As one of our listeners, we'd love to give you access to this guide absolutely free. You can get your copy right now by going to coffeebreakblogging.com. Again, go to coffeebreakblogging.com to get your copy, and we'll see you next time.